What is going on, everyone? Let's get into this live Q&A. Adam should be here any moment now, and I'm going to roll the intro. All right, for those of you who are new here, we do a live Q&A every Thursday. And in this Q&A, basically, we try to answer as many questions as you guys have as rapid fire as possible. It's just dependent on how many questions you guys ask. And we do intend on answering all of them. So go ahead and answer as many, or ask, I always say this, ask as many as you'd like. In the comments below, you're going to see a couple things. So actually, not in the comments, in the description. A few links to free resources which we have provided for you guys. One is a free training program that you can use to get everything that you need to for the gym. Two is a cycle resource, which basically allows you to figure out the dosing per concentration of drug that you're using. And three is, I believe, some other thing that I can't even remember. We have a lot of free resources. So, Adam, how are you doing?
Good. How are you, my man?
Good. I took the cast off. I'm at home, so I kind of leave it off. But
nice. How's the recovery going? Can you push anything?
Yeah, it's good. I honestly still can't really move. This is about my range of mobility, but it's a lot better than what it was. It's not swollen nor nearly disabled anymore, so it's really good.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. It's really good. So right off the jump, we got a couple questions. Well, just really one question from M. Kiefer. You offer meal plans. I can train all day, but I need help structuring a diet. I got to get these sugar cravings out of my life. It's gotten bad, man, to where I'm binging and purging. Need a custom diet. That was embarrassing to admit, lol, but your content is awesome, and I can really relate and connect to how you guys deliver your info. That's awesome. So, M. Kiefer, yes, we do nutrition-only training for some individuals. We do highly encourage training as well, because what we end up typically seeing, and I think Adam can only concur with this, is that a lot of people think they know what they're doing in training, and then we observe it and send training videos, get sent to us from our clients. We go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and it's like, holy Christ, there's so much work that needs to be done here. But we absolutely do nutrition only, and you are more than welcome to schedule a call with the link below. There's literally a link to book a call right now and get on board with us. So, and it is quite affordable to do nutrition only. So that's what I'll say there. But I really have to be honest, and this is not me trying to be a businessman. It's just that most people think they're training effectively, and you very well might be, but most often we kind of see that that's not the case. But
and just to further add to that, it's not that necessarily your training is not effective. It's just that personally, even with the combat training program, that is a general guideline, and we find, I personally believe, the best program, so to speak, for someone, the best, in quotation marks, is a program that's been optimized for them specifically. What equipment do you have access to? What are your pre-existing injuries? What movements feel best for you? What is the best stimulus to fatigue ratio? Movements for you based on what your strengths are. Do you have strong spinal erectors and you can do a bent over row? Or is your limiting back, or is your lower back the limiting factor, and you need to do chest support at everything? There's so many things which, if you take into account when we make a program, that we dial it in for you specifically, and you take just a baseline program and really modify it, that's when I personally think you get the best results, because it's hitting every muscle really well. You're getting a great mind-muscle connection, you're getting good stimulus, and you can progress. It's usually when people try just a baseline program, and even the combat one, it's a baseline program which will be good for most people, but to truly find what's best for you, that requires either on your own really tweaking and modifying things, or working with a coach to do that.
What is the combat training program? I don't even know, honestly.
Is he not talking about I think he's talking about our ebook one, the combat ready training program.
Oh, okay, that's he spelled it with a K, so I thought it was some
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was somebody else's thing. Yeah, I mean, I would the combat training program is like, that is very specific towards giving you a huge guideline to start from. But the difference is like, how do we, I could give someone an optimal training program, but if I don't see what they're doing in the gym and it turns out to be whack as shit, then maybe they need some help. But in other words, you should be fine if you were to do that. Most people would be. Just making sure that you're doing things correctly is the most important thing, which I provided videos on that training program. So hopefully it is insightful enough, but we'll see. Time will tell. Yeah, I realize that now. We spell it with a C, not a K, and that kind of. But I like the K because it's kind of like Coach Colton, like combat. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, might have to rebrand.
Okay, Yusuf asks, what is a realistic amount of contractile tissue someone can gain with slightly above average genetics for muscle building? Could build on their first cycle, 300 milligrams a week, 16 weeks, assuming a strict approach to dieting, recovery, and intense training. Thanks. What do you think, Adam?
You know what I think? Yeah, I think it's like looking to a crystal ball. But if I were to make a realistic figure, I would say anywhere from, well, I'll put in kilos first, 4 to 6 kilos. And I'll just explain the reasoning to that, which is like, roughly about anywhere, 8 to 14-ish pounds. And the reason I say that is typically the rate of gain, again, I will say typically, there's a lot of caveats to this. Typically the rate of gain we shoot for once, pharmacology has reached peak semi-concentration levels, we've gotten rid of all the water weight fluctuations. We typically shoot for about 1 to 2% total body mass gain per 4-week block or per month. Now, obviously, with PEDs, this can change dramatically. If you get put on 10 IUs of growth hormone, your rate of gain might be even faster than that, and you getting leaner and larger. But typically, we shoot for that, more so with naturals, but also enhanced individuals, to ensure that we minimizing the gain of adipose tissue. Because if I see someone and they're gaining like, a kilo a week, we know they're not putting a kilo a week of contractile tissue, lean, fat-free tissue. It's more likely, a bit of additional glycogen retention or more likely inflammation or water retention. And that's not what we're shooting for. So that's why I usually say 1 to 2% per month. And if you're talking about 16 weeks for an individual who's 100 kilos, because you also said realistic amount of tissue, well, it depends how much they weigh, right? So I'm assuming just 100 kilo or 220 pound individual. Personally, I would think, 4 to 6, 8 kilos of actual tissue. But again, it's so hard to tell. Like you say, intense training, but sure, but that's perceptive per individual. Average genetic, what do we define as average genetics? Response, how they manage the cycle. Are they escalating cycle? Are they escalating calories? So I appreciate the question, but there's so many things. It's so hard to tell. But if I were to just have to give you a figure, 4 to 6 kilos.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what's really important there, people, we're not trying to dog on people's training. This is just, we work with hundreds of clients literally, and this is what we see so commonly. So we kind of come up with these biases based on the general population we work with. But if you're willing, send training footage in Instagram and one of our DMs, and we'll definitely share it and talk about it on this live, or just privately message you about what could be better. But yeah, I have to agree. I think generally I guess the most elite client I've ever trained as far as rate of gain is Sean Kreiner. And he is like, it blows me away every time he checks in, because I'm like, dude, your physique is literally changed from last week, and it's perplexing. But even him, it's like on average, I would assume he's gaining about 1/4 of a pound per week to maybe 1/2 pound on an extremely, extremely good, dedicated, like full on week. And also just due to variability of whatever that causes that to happen. So in a month, generally about 1 pound to 1 pound and 1/4 is kind of where I see it. So right around in a 16-week program, let's just assume what Adam said is like right around that 8 kilos, 7 kilos. Like that's what I would assume to be like the pretty high responder to anything. That's where they would likely be at. But it's also just, again, so dependent on many different variables. One person might be really responsive to anabolics. Another person might be really responsive to IGF-1, because there's different receptor concentrations for both of those things. And everybody's a little bit different with how much androgen receptor density they might have, or IGF-1 receptor density. So it's hard to say for sure, and you kind of have to plug and play to be sure what you're a responder to. But rest assured that like you can absolutely gain about a pound a month, or at least a half a kilogram a month, if you are on top of your shit pretty hardcore. Tanner Revise. Hey Colton, going to Thailand over my honeymoon in Phuket, Patong. Are all pharmacies good out there for gear? Okay, so no. This is a really hard thing, and a lot of people come here, and I've seen it so many times where I walk into a pharmacy and there's like a bunch of meatheads in there like giggling and laughing because they can get trend and stuff from the pharmacy. But a lot of what is sold by pharmacies is just underground labs that is complete bunk, and it's just trying to flip a coin. So if you want to get gear from pharmacies, you have to get testosterone realistically, because testosterone will always be Testaviron for the most part. There is some that sell other brands, but Testaviron for the most part, which is Bayer's branding, and it is very good. It is like one of my favorite products on the market as of right now for performance enhancing purposes. So I do think there are basically a bunch of pharmacies that have everything that you need, which is testosterone for the most part, if you're trying to do that. But obviously you need an aromatase inhibitor and stuff if that becomes an issue while you're here. I don't know how long you're here, but I wouldn't buy anything outside of that realistically. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree exactly what Colton says, because you can go to most pharmacies, and I personally know multiple people who've gone to pharmacies, picked up products here, and they've been fake, they've been underdosed, they've even sometimes been contaminated, causing massive.
Yeah, that's one thing too, for sure.
That's what I'll be scared of. So I wouldn't fuck with anything except for bad testosterone ampules. And then you can also get your needles and things like that from there too. I'll just basically stick to anything that is pharmaceutical prescription. So I will say it is kind of hard to find an aromatase inhibitor, at least in my experience thus far. Speaking to some of these pharmacies, but you may be able to find one. If you can't find one, there are other resources here. If you're in Thailand, I know, send us a message. We can
send us a message.
Send you on the right path. But Bloodbuilt here are very helpful, and you can find what you need.
Yeah, it's a very resourceful place to be. So as long as you have some coin, you can pretty much get anything to happen. Okay, how important is free tests for naturals and enhanced individuals? And what? Oh, this is a different question. So we'll start with this one. How important is free tests for naturals and enhanced? And this is a pretty good question, but if you want us to roll off with it, I'll kind of feedback off your info.
Well, I think both are quite important in the sense that you want to be looking at both free and total test as a natural individual to make sure these levels are at least optimal. For an enhanced individual, it can be a bit different because I guess the amount of PDs you're using can skew free and total test depending on what type of testing you're using. But I don't know. I would just say important for both. I don't know how more you would want to look into. Like, do you want to look at potential levels? Do you want to look at ranges? But right off the bat, to me, at face value, I would just say yes, important for both. Maybe at varying levels of significance.
Yeah, like in a sense, free test is a good proxy to actual like hypogonadism, and total test isn't necessarily as accurate. Free test is more of like what's going to be biologically active, affecting tissues if it's freed and able to liberate a receptor site. But at the end of the day, like they're both accurate measurements. I would just assume if you, let's say it's very rare, but let's say you have low serum and high free testosterone, I would maybe disregard the low serum and introduce a more poignant attention on the free testosterone. But it's really not that. I think people conflate the importance of these different measurements because there's serum testosterone, there's biologically available testosterone as a measurement, there's free testosterone. So there's a lot of different ways to measure it, but ultimately they're all, from what research as far as clinical we have, it's all fairly much the same. It's not really that different in outcomes nor in clinical therapies applied. So I hope that helps. And then I guess in what context is it important for you? And that's another question too, like, because there could be other factors here, like estrogen conversion, or what are we talking about? So,
Mm-hmm.
and what about growth hormone? Yeah, so this is the tricky thing. In Thailand, you're probably not. There's only like a handful, probably one that me and Adam know about, which sells growth hormone. And you're probably not going to find it anywhere outside of that. You have to remember, it is like a semi first world country. So like there's dirt roads and like people driving, like you get your mail from a moped with like a sidecar, you know what I'm saying? And it's like a bicycle wheel on his moped. It's not like a advanced country. So like the shipping methods and the pharmacy itself literally cannot afford the growth hormone, more than likely. So to assume that every pharmacy would have it is not so true. There is a couple, and they're well established, and you have to know the right people to get it. I've never personally actually seen it outside of the one we go to.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, when it comes to getting growth, you can go into these like HRT and TRT clinics, so to speak. There are lots of them. Personally, I wouldn't advise it because they're literally just getting the same bare ampules, the same growth that you can get from some of the suppliers here, and just massively, marking up the price.
Yeah.
So yeah, just look in the right places. But if the price seems massively inflated, it probably is, and I wouldn't suggest purchasing it.
Yeah, 100%. I'll be sure to message when I'm out there. Yeah, man, of course. It's a great time. You'll love it. It's probably the best country in the world, in my opinion. I'm biased. If you guys don't mind sharing, what do you consider low T? Also, have you guys ever seen single digit free test or free test in the hundreds?
Yes to both, I guess.
Yes. And then the first question, if you guys don't mind
Yes.
sharing, what do you consider low T? If I can talk American references, and then you can probably speak on non-standard American. But I think generally like 300 milligrams per deciliter, or nanograms per deciliter, sorry, is what I would consider low for most individuals. It depends on age, context. Like if someone is in a caloric deficit versus surplus, if they have been unslept versus well slept, if they've trained really hard or done cardio compared to have a good rest, if their diet is satisfactory in the, backlogged like fatty acids needed to produce these good hormones. So it's really dependent on those things, but I would generally assume like 300 nanograms per deciliter in my ballpark.
Yes. Australian ranges can be quite different. So they also do nanograms per deciliter, but they typically put the ranges in like 5 to 30. If I believe, you talk about low T or free T.
I think
total testosterone or
serum. I think is what he's talking about, but maybe he is because he's also the guy that asked the question about the free.
Okay, well, that's similar to the American range, where I think they have it at, I want to say about 200 to 900, I believe, for the total one. But this can vary also between like 300 and 1100, depending what country you're at. As Colton said, I would say anything about 300. But I also have a sort of a differing opinion, because some individuals will feel fine on like 400, for instance, and be completely functional. But what is important to test it, if you were sitting at, let's say, 600, and then suddenly you drop to 300, okay, for whatever reason, you've done everything to bring it up. For me, that would be low T for that individual, because it's a 50% decrease in their own testosterone, even though they're within the natural reference range. So for them, I would consider that low T, because they start feeling awful and they're at 300. Yeah, they're within the range, but for them, it's low, so to speak. So for most individuals, I would say I would try to get it to the top of the reference to individual. That's what we always try and shoot for, because that's going to be the most optimal for sports performance, lean tissue, etc.
Right. And I do have, I think the other free resources that I was forgetting is a lab, and like it tells you exactly what the ranges are. And if I don't have that down in the description, I will put it in the comments after this. But for free testosterone, it's 14. It's the same measurement, nanograms per deciliter, but it's 14 is like the low end.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah. And that's where I consider people like most often low. Generally, what I see is when people get on gear, they accelerate that up to like 80s, 90s, sometimes higher, depending on what they're running. So I hope that's productive. And obviously it's much, much different for females. So that's something you want to take as a precautionary soundbite. Okay, so that is all the questions we have as of right now until we get more. What's come across? Oh, by the way, we got a house yesterday, so we put a down payment
very nice.
down on the property, and it's
Deposit?
like a
Purchase.
a
Deposit or purchase?
deposit. So it's a crazy, dude. It's 35K bought for 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a private pool, garage. Like it's crazy. Like it is absolutely crazy. It's kind of close to where you are right now, actually, and it's just like it's
more towards
something
the
I
city,
never thought would be possible.
Is it more towards the city, as in like closer towards me, or is it still
It's
like
more
in terms
towards
of
the
elite
coastline?
gym?
So where you are, you know how there's that like the coast kind of to the right of you near Muscle Factory. If you go up like 10 minutes, it's like right there. We're about 15 minutes away from Muscle Factory, essentially.
Oh, it's very nice. Yeah, I know where that is.
Yeah. So it just blows me away because for individuals who don't know, 35K baht is like it's like almost $1,000. So it's less than $1,000. It's like 900 something, and it's like a whole house. And I just never thought that would be possible. It's just crazy to think that like that's sustainable here, but it is, which is really cool. And the guy's a dude that's from the same place that Luke is from, which I'm totally forgetting where that is. Wales, yes. So it's like nice because he can communicate actually, which is convenient. But yeah, so that's super sick. I'm really excited for that. We should have a housewarming party.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Housewarming party was drinking water.
Yeah, like cooking up some chicken breasts in the air fryer. That'd be a good fucking party. Okay, so you got a lot of heat about the whole I don't even remember the fucking Nate kid. What's his name? I'm not even trying to be rude. I just genuinely don't remember his name.
I believe his name is Nate. I don't know what his surname is.
Yeah. And basically people were, I think, mostly supportive of what we said about him last week's live. But there was a couple people, including like Tanner Tatted, who weren't so super supportive. Nate Udi is his name. And I'm curious on what your thoughts are about this.
Okay. Well, my thoughts are they did look at the one soundbite, and I guess, well, I don't believe I was taking out of context because I just stand by what I said. Okay. Yes, there were some definite subjective presumptions there. Like, I don't know if he wants to be the next Sam Sulek. That's complete speculation. I'm just making shit up. But that is simply my opinion, which doesn't mean it's right. But it's also what I do stand by, which is my opinion, is that I don't think promoting wild doses at that age in that context is good. And then, some try to say, well, his blood work is pristine, he's under the guidance of a coach. What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. that just means that your coach has told you to take this. That doesn't mean it's right. We're not God. Like, I'm the first person to say we don't know everything. Then on the other hand, too, blood work may be pristine now, but what about 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years? It's about the long-term effects that we care for. And personally, I think, sharing information about PEDs to educate people is fantastic. But I think we need to put caveats for that. Like, whenever I share information about what I am personally doing, I say, this is what I am personally doing. Do not copy this. Do not do this. This is working for me, for my specific circumstances right now. I'm taking, the appropriate precautions and risks, but there's still risks involved. And I think we need to be very clear with that, because unfortunately, many, people of a younger generation may look at that, look at the post, see, okay, this guy's taking 2 grams of gear. Maybe this is what I got to do. Maybe this, and I don't think that is a good way to, promote things. And also, the final thing I'll say is, if you're posting on a public platform, myself and, Colton included, you are open to criticism. That is life. People are allowed to give you opinions. People may hate me, people may hate Colton, people may think we're idiots, people may post all sorts of things about us, and that is their right, their right to do so. And voice their opinion. So I don't think no one on earth is devoid of criticism or commentary. And this idea that you can't tell, no one's telling anyone how to live anyone else's life. But I think, you have the right to be criticized, just like I have the right to be criticized for anything I've done. because that is what fosters, debate and learning and growth amongst individuals. Otherwise, if we can't, talk about what we're doing, then I don't see how we're going to progress as a society. So I think that was a bit of a joke. And I think, again, in my opinion, when people have personal attachments to people or friendships or, people in person, maybe, he's a great guy and he's not, and he really means well. And then people have that personal attachment. But I'll be the first one to say, if my friends, if you see me doing anything stupid, say it's stupid. It doesn't reflect on me as an individual, because we all do stupid things from time to time, but that warrants criticism. And yeah, that's my rant for today.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts, dude. I think that, like, I don't know, like it's a weird world we're in right now. And there's like a lot of people who are garnering a lot of influence through being sort of like overly dramatic. And I'm gonna share my screen again one more time, just because I think there's some important stuff to go over. Here's another sort of follower of the whole kind of model that is now the 18-ish year old doing compounds and publicizing it to a massive degree, talking about like different things, you know what I'm saying? And like showing basically themselves like, I'll never be as big as Shizzy, and then like goes straight into just like injecting, you know what I'm saying? Like just crazy shit, dude. Like shit I would have never done as a kid. And
yeah,
it blows my mind. And I just think like, okay, sure, like maybe you're like proactively educating on forms of use of steroids or enhancements, but like what this is doing fundamentally is like giving people a subconscious signal that says, if I want to look like this, I am going to have to use some form of enhancement. And whilst it's also the same guys under the same research chem store stuff, I get it. Like they're promoting this, but they're obviously using real gear simultaneously. He breaks down his cycle in, I believe, this video, but it's only audio, so I'm not going to go through it. But it's bad for everybody. It's bad for everybody, because what you ultimately have is like a congressman looks at this video and he sees a, fucking kid, basically, right? Like a serious kid using anabolic androgenic steroids, altering his life. And he knows no better. Like he has no background in this at all. And so he's watching this and he's like, dude, what is going on? Like, I need to make this change now. What happens as a result? And it's not a good look to our like small population in the world, because you have these guys like doing like crazy shit like this in the gym and like fucking showing their injections with like rave music and like it's like this whole scene. And I seriously just don't think it's going to benefit anyone in the long run. And if anything, it's going to make things harder for us to do and less publicly acceptable, if that makes sense. Right? Like there's many things that were taboo that became publicly acceptable. Something like, smoking marijuana, for instance. It used to be something that like dirty drug dealers did in their fucking basements. And then like slowly but surely it started getting more publicized, more professionalized and cleaner looking by the public eye. And in that, it became more acceptable to a point where it was legalized in several states in the United States. But the problem with hormones is that this is the image that people associate with it, is like this deranged young male, trying to put on as much mass as possible, like completely psychologically unwell, and promoting that other males use it and that are young as well. And I just don't think it's good for anybody to be at the end of the day, not for that individual's health, not for that individual's community, and certainly not for the community of bodybuilding.
I agree. And again, I'll just preface this that this is my and Colton's opinion, but my opinion on this is, firstly, are there many bodybuilders who use gear between the ages of 18 and 21 and end up wildly successful? Yes. But in my opinion, the science is very fucking clear on this. Your prefrontal cortex for most individuals is not developed, until about 24, 25. For most individuals who are not going to be, IFBB pro bodybuilders, or even those who become IFBB pro bodybuilders, because remember, a pro card is not a ticket to print money. It's what you do with it. But you are potentially risking, development of your brain. Especially if you're looking into neurotoxics, steroids, things across the blood-brain barrier, 19 or derivatives and so forth. So that is a huge risk there. And I personally don't think it's a good idea, as well as, things like your growth plates, which, typically close in your early 20s. Yeah, you could say Arnold grew tall. Yeah, of course he did. There's always outliers. But for most individuals, there is a high chance you may close your growth plates. And I personally think making your whole personality around promoting gear is, I think I hate to use the word problematic, but in my personal opinion, I don't think it's a good thing, because there's so much more to bodybuilding than just the gear usage. Because obviously it's interesting, it's controversial, it's become, more widely acceptable, more widely known, but like it's only one aspect. Like, I just did a short reel the other day where I was just trying to emphasize that, like, PEDs support the diet and the training. They're not the basis of your progression. Do they work? Absolutely, but they need to support the diet and training. Why have I seen so many, anecdotally speaking, why have I seen so many athletes come over to me and they like literally have said, I'm on 500 tests, 500 train, and I'm not seeing results? I kid you not. Yeah. I've seen this so many times. I had a string of 6 athletes start with me who all said something similar to that. And we found out that the nutrition and the diet were horrendous. And then people may make arguments to me, well, why are there people like, Vigorous Steve and stuff who only talk about PEDs? But look at the way he speaks about it. He gives very nuanced, very in-depth information, talking about the risks and how to use it appropriately. It's completely different than, in my opinion, than someone being like, look at me, injection, I'm big. Like, come on. Like, again,
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I do believe this young man has the right to post whatever the hell he wants, because I'm very big on, freedom of speech, freedom of information. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I agree with Colton with this. I don't think it leads to anything positive for anyone. All it leads to is, unfortunately, misinformed youth thinking this is the answer to their problems, and I don't think it is.
Right. And the one thing I'll lend Sam Sulek is, like, he reveals more than the gear behind bodybuilding. Like, he talks about the psychology and like his philosophy, because you do develop certain philosophies as you travel through these like arduous times. Like, bodybuilding is not easy. It was never made to be easy. It's a very, very intense and competitive sport. And it develops a personality that's actually quite beautiful and stoic in some nature, and develops really hard and efficacious workers. But if you're just blatantly sort of like flaring up the fact that it's just all about gear, and like that's the idealization of it, it's like that I have a problem with, because it's my population of people. It's generally the way I've become successful in business. And we're seeing now that like people are getting banned for life on YouTube because of posting this type of content. And that is becoming more widely spread to educational channels now. Like, our friend Aaron just got his completely banned from the internet. Like, he cannot any longer produce a YouTube channel again because of this type of stuff. And I just think, like, man, if this was never to happen in the first place, we didn't have young people doing this, I think we'd still be able to publicize a lot of the safer ways to do these things and the most efficacious way to do these things online without any kind of pushback. So yeah, it's a tricky situation for sure. And it just sucks because it is like so wildly financially driven too. Because if you think about like all the 18-year-olds who can spend $60 on a vial of whatever, compared to like a $300 coach a month or what have you, it's like, man, they're always going to pick that $60 vial. And even if that $60 vial costs them $1,000 in a year, they're still going to choose that over the coach. So it just sucks.
Yeah. And last thing I'll say to address a potential counter argument, and then I don't also want to make this about attacking this young man specifically, because I know there's many people doing this, okay, not just this guy. But my individuals might say, oh, but he speaks about safer use in 1 or 2 of his reels, or he says don't do this. That's great, but when you merely pull up the page and 90% of the content is like basically glorifying PD use in a non-educational, non-informative way, no one's going to pay attention to the one reel you said, like, I don't know, a year ago, 6 months ago, being like, oh, don't do this, it's a bad idea, do it with a coach, blah, 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 do your blood work. no one's gonna pay attention to
No
that, and
one's
that's
gonna
why
give
I
a
think
shit. Yeah.
yeah, and that's why personally I feel a responsibility if I'm putting stuff online that it's A, accurate, and B, is promoting what everyone has a different moral standard, everyone has a different ethical standard, but what I personally see as moral and ethical, and that's giving people information, but also not promoting something which is harmful. And I don't care what anyone says. In my opinion, PEDs are harmful, but it's how you do it and how you mitigate it. If you're taking TRT, arguably that's medical use, is not harmful, but super physiological doses of PEDs are harmful to some extent. Not necessarily saying they're going to kill you, but they're going to degrade health markers in some form. So you cannot sit there and go, well, it's fine, his blood was here, it's safe. It is not. It will degrade at some point. You're not superhuman. It might be 5 years, might be 10 years. Something will go wrong. That's how PEDs work. It's like you're burning the candle at both ends, so to speak, and you need to know how to safely manage them. It's a minefield. So yeah, last thing I'll say about that, I don't, like I said, we're here to give good educational content. We're not here to just shit on people. Yeah, sure, we may share our opinions, but at the end of the day, we are promoting what we think is responsible use, safer use, and just giving people education, information on how to keep safe and pursue arguably extreme hobby.
Yeah, 100%. Joe R asked, "Did you guys ever consider releasing a cookbook like Greg just said?" If I ever did something like that, it would be literally like how to cook chicken 800 times in a row without ever like failing. I don't have any tactical skills as far as cooking goes, or fancy recipes or anything. I just literally am a meat and rice guy through and through. I'll never change. It's just kind of how I am. But Adam, on the other hand, does come up with some fancy recipes. So that's a possibility.
Yeah, I was about to say it's very interesting because I sort of am exactly like Colt in the sense that when I'm cooking just for myself and prior to meeting my partner Kat, and give a shit, I just cook meat, rice, and vegetables for myself on repeat. But after being with my partner, who's like very, I guess, particular with food and has like quite high standards, man, I know how to barbecue a steak in like a million different ways. Sous vide, barbecue, reverse sear. So I'm pretty good at cooking meat. And then when it comes to like low calorie recipes, because when we're on a diet, I just increase vegetable and fruit. But she would want like variations of protein pancakes, protein ice cream. So I actually have cooked a lot of different and varied shit. In terms of making a cookbook, yeah, I mean, I just share. I mean, I've told her to start sharing the recipes we do for free. There's that, because they're basically all variations of something I've cobbled together. So maybe we'll make a compilation of them.
Yeah, it's just that it's so interesting. I don't know. Like, I think everyone has a cookbook, and if you were to like put them all in a pile and like search through them with an AI system, there'd be a lot of matches between different cookbooks because there's only so much that a person can do. I guess it's just
correct.
You're buying a cookbook for the author and more of like what they're doing in specific. But I think that cookbooks can be useful. Greg Doucette's is definitely a different kind of cookbook from like the standard protocol of what people were doing before. So, I mean, it's definitely an interesting topic, but I don't think I could. I personally just don't know how to cook.
One thing I also finally say is when your calories get so high, like, dude, when you're maybe a female and you're eating like 1,800, 2,000 calories, or you're cutting on like 1,600 calories, you can go into those fancy recipes and shit. But when I'm putting down like 4,000, 5,000 calories,
I'm like, dude, fuck this. Like, there's no way. First of all, I'm eating 6 times a day, so I'm not taking the time to fucking cook a meal like that. That's crazy. Second of all, it's like I only have so much capacity in my tummy. It's like we're not
just use a barbecue for your steak, honestly, or your meat. Seriously, that is the biggest hack. Use a barbecue.
It's for chicken, steak, whatever. It's fucking delicious when you use a barbecue. If you injected GH, then use MK677 directly after. Would the MK do anything to the GH to your GH levels? So I actually have a video coming out about this, specifically with long-acting growth hormone, like the new formulations that are coming out with once weekly injected growth hormone. But normal daily injected growth hormone does inhibit natural production in the pituitary, or not the pituitary, sorry, the pituitary, sorry, not, I was thinking melatonin in the pineal gland. You won't be able to produce endogenously growth hormone after having a peaked saturation of growth hormone. So it depends on what amount of growth hormone you're injecting. if you're doing a large bolus, likely probably nothing would happen. And in fact, the growth hormone would take precedence over the MK677. If, let's say, you are a natural individual or you haven't taken growth hormone for a period of time, and you then dose MK677 without any natural or exogenous suppression of that system, then you would see an elevation in growth hormone / IGF-1 levels. But my theory is that if you did both, you would likely see, because growth hormone is such an instantaneously affecting thing, it's like in the matter of a couple hours, you would likely see an elevation in growth hormone levels and thus IGF-1 from that, and then probably diminished results, if anything, from the MK677.
Yes, and to further add to that, let's say Colton's theory, let's say the theory doesn't hold true, and there is some endogenous stimulation, pituitary gland, and you're increasing your endogenous supply of growth hormone. It's sort of like taking 300 milligrams of testosterone and then taking a bit of indoclomethine or HCG and wondering if that's going to make a tangible difference to your testosterone levels.
Yeah,
maybe, probably not, and that small increase is going to be so negligible that you might as well not take it. You're not going to feel. You might as well just increase the exogenous growth hormone dose by like half a unit or 1 unit. That's going to have a far greater difference than running the MK677, and probably be cheaper, to be honest, based on this process. So with we always say, if you're using exogenous testosterone, if you're using exogenous growth hormone, combining it with a secretagogue or something that increasing your endogenous supply is generally, in our opinion, not recommended, because the results are going to be negligible.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and the video about long-acting growth hormone is so interesting, because long-acting growth hormone doesn't appear to suppress endogenous production of growth hormone. So you still have like normal pulsatile secretions of growth hormone whilst using that, in comparison to daily injected growth hormone, which blunts natural production. It's actually really, really interesting. So I'm really excited for that stuff to become, it is available, but it's just wildly fucking expensive and not realistic to anyone. But when it comes to a point where it's more economically sensible, I think it'll be a really cool drug to experiment with. But all right, man. Well, unfortunately, I have to quit this one a little early. I have a call coming up in 3 minutes with a client. So I appreciate your time, and we will certainly be here next week on Thursday. Thank you guys for your questions. If you have any furthermore, just DM us on Instagram, leave comments below this video. We're happy to help. And M. Kiefer, we better see you scheduling a call with me so we can get you into a nutritional only program. But let's catch you later.